Quarantine Questions with Jack Heron. This is episode 4. I am very excited to announce that we have Boston Celtics assistant Joe Mazzulla with us. Joe, how's it going today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for taking your time with us. Joe is a former player at West Virginia University. He spent, I believe it was 1 year, right, with the Maine Red Claws?
Yes. Yep.
And then you had 2 years at Fairmont State as the head coach, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So
Yep.
let's get right into it. Let's start with your playing career. You played for two really good coaches at West Virginia, and Coach Beilein and Coach Huggins. Tell me how it was different playing with those two guys. Both are legends, but both have their own styles. What was different about playing for them?
Yeah, very fortunate to have both of those guys as coaches, and as much as people think they were different, they had a lot of similarities. They were both deep thinkers. Hugs was magna cum laude at West Virginia University, so I think sometimes he doesn't get the reputation for his IQ and his intelligence, because of his competitive nature at times. So they both thought the game on both ends of the floor. They both valued development on and off the floor. They just had a different way of showing their emotions. They had a different way of communicating their expectations, and it just depends on the type of style that you have. There's no right or wrong answer to coaching. It's just what fits your personality the best. And Beilein did a great job of coaching to his strengths, and Hugs did a great job of coaching to his. But at the end of the day, they were preaching and talking about the same thing.
Off the top of your head, do you have any great Coach Huggins stories you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I have a lot. I don't know which ones I can share, but I would say, I think he's misunderstood in some ways. He's extremely competitive. He does get a little worked up at times, but everybody that has played for him loves him, respects him, and would do anything for him. And I think that just comes from who he is as a person. He coaches with his heart. And one of the greatest things he has mastered is, regardless of what happens on the floor, the second the horn goes off to a game or a practice, he doesn't treat you any differently. He still loves you, he still cares about you. It's just when he steps in between those lines, he's competitive and he has an expectation.
Awesome, man. So after West Virginia, we said you went to the G League and coached for the Maine Red Claws. Just tell me a little bit about the G League process, and the experience. What did you learn from it? How did you get into it? Things like that.
Yeah. Well, before the G League stop, I had 4 years as an assistant at two different Division II schools. I spent 2 years at Glenville State and then 2 years at Fairmont State as an assistant. So, during that time in the Division II level, I think it was one of the best. It was the second best experience I had as a coach because there's not a lot of resources and there's not a lot of jobs. So you got to become well-rounded. You have to recruit, you have to coach, you have to travel, you have to develop, you have to work on the operations, you have to work on the academics. So I was just able to become extremely well-rounded as a coach, and just through relationships. And I think obviously my playing career helped, and through still being relatively young, getting into coaching early, I was able to get into the G League, which was my favorite and best year of coaching. There's not much money involved, so it just really shows. It gives you an opportunity to prove if you really love the game, if you really love coaching. It's very similar to Division II level. The travel's the same. The resources are somewhat the same. And it just, you peel back the onion and you're just able to work, you're able to grind. And, there's a lot of people watching, and it just gives you that opportunity to learn and get better. So I was able to use those experiences into my first tenure as a head coach at Fairmont State.
Now let's move on to Fairmont State. You spent 2 years as the head coach there. You're one of the most successful programs, at least in this area, probably in the nation in those 2 years. What do you think the keys to success at that level are? You mentioned that, you got to do so much and you don't have all the resources of the Division Ones, but why were you so successful in your time there?
Well, because they were better, they were good before I got there. My time as an assistant there, I was able to join a great staff and a great program with Coach Calhoun. He really did a great job of building that program. The year I left to go to Maine, they went to the national championship, and then he went on to Youngstown State. I was able to come right in. So I was blessed to be able to just come into a program that has already had some success, and it was my job to continue that by finding some small areas where I can implement my style and personality, but at the same time, to just stick to what had been working there before. So we had great players. had a great pipeline for recruiting, had great resources from the community and from the administration, and we had great facilities. So I was very lucky in my first head coaching job that I was able to have all of those resources.
So not many people, even for me down in Virginia, not a lot of people know a lot about the Mountain West Conference, but you guys have a little bit of a gauntlet out there. With your time at Glenville State and your time at Fairmont State, just talk a little bit about how the league was and how tough it was to compete in it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think, everybody's talking about positionless basketball right now, but I think Division Two's been positionless for a long, long time. There's very few teams, especially in the Mountain East Conference and our region of basketball. There's very few teams that have traditional bigs. It's a very fast league. It's very guard oriented. The biggest guys are between 6'6" and 6'7", and they're able to shoot and they're able to dribble, and they're the most athletic guys on the floor. So it gave me a good opportunity to learn kind of where the game is right now. Division Two's been there for a long time, so it's guard oriented, it's dribble drive oriented, it's fast paced. They've been shooting threes at the Division Two level at a higher rate than they are in the NBA right now for a long time, and I've been on the good side of that, and I've been on the bad side of some teams that shot the three really well. So I just think it's not many people know about it, but I enjoyed the Division Two level. It just gives you a great opportunity to coach. There's not much political stuff involved, and the kids there just want to play basketball.
Yeah, I accidentally said Mountain West. I meant Mountain East.
Uh,
Thanks for
yeah,
fixing that for me.
no
So
problem.
let's move on to your transition to the NBA. Just coming from being a head coach in college to moving to the NBA this year, what's the transition been like for you?
It's been fun. I've had a little bit of a head start because I was with Maine, Boston's G League team, so I was comfortable with the staff. I was comfortable with the way Brad did things, and I was comfortable with the front office. So it was an easy transition from a relationship standpoint. And I think anytime you go from running your own organization to now being an assistant, it's obviously going to be somewhat different. But the great thing about the Celtics and this organization is, you're the head job of your position. And even though I'm an assistant coach, I have great freedom because of Brad and because of the front office to be the head coach of my role. My role is to help with the defense any way possible, and it's just to help develop the young guys. So I have the opportunity to be the head coach of my role there, and I take full advantage of that. And just working and getting better and just trying to fulfill my role the best for the Celtics.
That's a perfect transition into what I was going to say next. Speaking about your roles, what's like a common day for you in the NBA as an assistant? Like, what's a common off day for you, and then what's a common game day for you? Like,
Yeah, it's funny. I think once you get started, there's 3 days. There's an off day, there's a game day, and there's a travel day or a practice day. So there's a different schedule for each one of those days. Off days are a little bit lighter, obviously, where some of the guys are, depending upon the minutes they played the night before, are either just working on their bodies, treatment, strength and conditioning. And then some of the guys that aren't playing big minutes, they don't really have off days. They're constantly in the gym, trying to maintain their conditioning, trying to maintain their skills for when their name is called. So, off days are a little bit lighter. Game days are relatively long. You're just trying to prepare for your opponent, and then trying to get the players that you work with prepared for that opponent as well. At the same time, trying to get them to learn from their last game. Could be the night before, could be 2 days ago. So game days are they're pretty long. And then, travel days or practice days are relatively light. You have the opportunity with the travel to get a lot of work done. With 82 games, and you're constantly getting to that next game from a preparation standpoint. So travel days are one of my favorites because you're able to practice, and then you're able to just kind of travel when you're on the plane. There's not much distractions, phone's not ringing, and you just have the ability to open up your laptop and get to work.
awesome, man. So with the NBA season in limbo right now, they're talking about trying to bring it back for the playoffs, but none of us are really sure what's going on. What are you guys doing to stay sharp? What are you individually doing, and what are you guys as a team trying to do to keep everybody sharp?
Yeah, I mean, we communicate constantly, constantly in communication with the guys that I work with. Obviously, it's more of a mindset right now. It's important that you do get some rest, that you do take care of your body. You don't want to be working as hard as you were while the season was going on, because then you'll be burned out. So you have to find that balance of a mindset of rest, and at the same time, just we have a phrase: stay 1 week away from your best shape. and whatever that looks like for each player. So helping them there. And Brad in the front office does a great job of us communicating weekly and just things that are going on. For me personally, as soon as kind of this quarantine started, I had so much to learn and so much to reflect on from my first year in the NBA. I got right into my off-season projects. I had a list of those things that I needed to do throughout the season, and for as long as I was going to be in quarantine, I was just going to work. I was going to treat this as my off-season and just reflect and learn and try to embed everything that I had been exposed to into my mind and into my coaching philosophy, take what I liked and what I didn't like. And, so this last week or so, I just kind of finished up on my off-season projects and, now just staying sharp and like they said, stay 1 week away from our best shape, mentally and physically.
And what are some of those projects, if you don't mind me asking?
Just a lot of reads. I think one of the big things now with skill development is rim decisions, read decisions, pick and roll decisions. What works best in the NBA, what wins in the NBA as far as Eastern Conference, Western Conference. We're fortunate enough to be one of the best top five in offense and defense. So, there's not much to get out of our system to learn, but it's always good to just be aware of what some of the other best teams and the best players are doing. So just studying the best teams, what they're great at, why they're great, and then studying the best players, what they're great at and why they're great.
So your boss, Brad Stevens, has a reputation of being one of the best young X and O guys in the NBA. Just talk a little bit about coaching under him and what it's like, and how you view him as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a good relationship over the last 3 years or so, starting when I was here in Maine, and just a great person. I think anytime you see people who are great at their job, I think it usually starts with who they are at home. And Brad's a great person. He's a family man, cares about his wife and kids, and he cares about people before we're even coaches. So you're able to come in every single day and know you work for a guy that cares about you. And with the time that he spends working, he's very diligent in that. He's very prepared. And like I said before, he gives assistants the ultimate gift, which is the freedom to be the head coach at their position. So, we're able to come every day with his trust, and we work under his guidelines to just make our guys and try to make the organization the best that it can be. And that's you can't ask for anything else as an assistant, for that freedom and that trust from from the guys above to be able to do that.
Sounds like a great boss, man.
Yeah, he is.
We'll move to a little bit of lighter stuff. I'm going to do about a little rapid fire question for you. Five
Cool.
simple questions, but what's your favorite pregame meal before you coach?
This year has changed. There's a Star Market right underneath the Boston Garden. So on home games, I always get sushi. I get sushi. I get like a cup of clam chowder, and then I get a salad.
Well, that's very Boston of you right there. What's your favorite basketball movie?
Man, favorite basketball movie. I know it's gonna be quick, but I don't like giving quick answers because I always go back and say, "Man, I wish I would have said this instead." Um, I don't really watch too many basketball movies. I like watching other sports movies. But if I had to give, I like Miracle. Miracle is one of my favorite sports movies. I love Coach Herb Brooks. The way he used psychology and a mindset and how he was able to just build that team's reputation into that. So I love a lot of what Herb Brooks did. Favorite basketball movie, it would either have to be The Sixth Man or Blue Chips.
Ooh.
Yeah, I like the Sixth Man a lot.
Yeah, the Wayans brothers, man. Who's your basketball GOAT?
I can't answer this because I mean, obviously you'd have to go with Jordan. I haven't had a chance to watch The Last Dance yet. I'm really looking forward to doing that. But as you study greatness and as you study and you're around people and especially being around this year, it's so hard to say who's the best because everybody is great at what they do, and some of the best players in this league and some of the best players of all time have just taken what they've had, done simple with it, and have just become great. So, I've been very fortunate. It's only been 1 year, but I've been around greatness, and it's just amazing how greatness looks differently for everybody. So what Jordan was great at is different than what LeBron is great at, is different than what Giannis is great at, or Tatum, or Kemba Walker, or anybody on our team. So I think it's hard to say that when you see these guys work as hard as they do, and you realize that greatness looks different for everybody.
I say stuff like that all the time. I mean, I would pick MJ if I had to pick one, but I mean, I think comparing players so much when they play so differently, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and they're all great. I mean, obviously you're going to have the best of the best, but at the end of the day, what these guys are able to do on a night in and night out basis and play to the level that they play at, it's remarkable. And you always go back to when you see the debates about all-star teams, and there's only 20 spots, but greatness is more than just 20 people or how many ever spots there are. So anytime we get into these debates about who should be on and who shouldn't, you're debating about two guys who are the absolute elite at what they do on a daily basis, and the margin for error and the difference in their greatness is so small. So you just got to learn to appreciate greatness more than anything else.
Yeah, I feel you, man. What's your favorite thing to do outside of basketball?
I like to read, and then I like to spend time with the kids. Spend time with my wife and kids. I haven't gotten into TV shows, but during this quarantine, I've ran through Homeland. So I've gotten into a little routine of reading a lot, playing with the kids outside, and then at night, my wife and I just watch as many episodes of Homeland as we can before we go to sleep.
Gotcha, man. And what's your favorite basketball memory?
I would say we had just won. It used to be winning the Big East championship. Playing at Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. Being a part of the West Virginia community for 13 years and just hearing Country Roads and hearing Let's Go Mountaineers in the greatest arena of all time was just unbelievable, especially with the history of the Big East tournament. And I would say right up there with that, we just win the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four, and we're on the floor. We're celebrating. I get a shoulder tap, and I turn around. It's my dad, and somehow he made it from the stands. I don't know how he got on the court through security, but somehow he managed to get on the floor there, and it was just great to give him a hug. And I knew how proud he was, so that's right up there.
Awesome, man. And the last question I have for you is, what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe trying to get into the NBA, whether it's, coaching, scouting, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have long-term goals. I think it's important to have realistic dreams. And my goal was never to find the best way to get into the NBA. It was just get into the NBA. So once I make that long-term goal, I did everything possible to prepare myself to say, if an NBA coach or a front office called right now, am I prepared enough for them to offer me a job? So it wasn't much as how can I get in, as much as it was do everything you can to prepare yourself to be the best coach that you can be for your goals. So learning the NBA game, coaching like you're in the NBA. I was in college, but I treated them like professionals. I think that's important. So I just set a goal, and then I just worked to do everything I could to be prepared, and just had the faith that that call was going to come one day. And when it did, fortunately enough, I was prepared to accept the job that they had. So I would say don't get caught up in as much as trying to move up as trying to just be the best at where you're at, and just be prepared, because a lot of the times we want these jobs, but in reality we're not ready for them. And I learned that. I was at Fairmont State, and I applied for a head coaching job kind of in the region, and I felt comfortable that I was going to get it, and I didn't get it. And my mindset not getting it was there's something that I still need to learn in order for me to be a successful head coach. And if I would have gotten this job, I wouldn't have learned it. So I took 2 more years to learn what I needed to, and then I felt more prepared for when that head coaching job came.
All right. I appreciate everything with you, man. Thanks so much for your time. Again, Joe Mazzulla, Boston Celtics. Have a good one, man. Stay safe out there.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. I
Yep.
enjoyed it.
Yep. Thanks, man.